The community has spoken. We're going to tell you who the best player on the Badgers is this year, according to you, the Badger fans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Harings. Over there is Justin from the Bucky Report. Today's episode is going to be a special one. Thank you for tuning in, by the way, being an everydayer, being here with us every single day. I asked the community, Discord, rank your top 10 Badger football players this year. And rank them based on how good they are, not what they're going to do in the NFL, not upside, not these could be the biggest stars on the team, thinking of like a Nicholas Clayton. Just who are the 10 best college football players this year? Rank them in order. Top player gets 10 points, second gets 9, all the way down. We tally up all the votes. Justin, we're gonna talk about what the community said. We each kind of put some input into this, but this is a community decision. We're gonna tell the community where they're wrong, where they're right. No,
what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? We're gonna react to it. So let's put the list up. Here's the list, Justin, starting with Ricardo Hallman, number 1. I have 15 up here, so I have some top 10 and then some honorable mention, going down to Jaden Ballard at number 11. Looking at this list, what is the first thing that stands out to you?
Probably that Preston Zachman's too low. I love Brown. He hasn't proven as much as Zachman has at this point. And I think that, well, he's not super flashy. Zachman is really stable. And that's where I would probably move him up the list a bit. And also offensive linemen. I think if we look back on this season, what we're going to look back on is the fact that we have some upperclassmen offensive linemen that really provided some stability and allowed the offense to really enjoy success this year. I see, Malman's up there pretty high. Renfro should probably be a little bit higher. I think Brunner needs to be fairly, all three of those guys are going to be a massive part of whether or not this team is successful or not.
Yeah, let me react to that in a second. I want to read this list off. I should have done that first for people listening on audio. So number 1 on the list was Ricardo Hallman. Mason Reiger came in number 2. Christian Alego 3. Vinny Anthony 4. Riley Mallman came in at 5 on this list. And Dilin Jones, Joe Brunner, Austin Brown, Billy Edwards, Darian Dupree comes in at number 10. And then the next kind of honorable mention, Tackett Curtis, Renfro, Zachman at 13, Corey Walker, and Jaden Ballard. I think your first point is dead on. That was the first thing I said is Preston Zachman, I think, is far too underrated among Badger fans. He was number 8, just looking at my list. I had him at number 8 on my list. And it's for a lot of the reasons you talked about. I think because he's consistent and solid, it's not flashy, and that gets overlooked a little bit. But, dude, there's a ton of value in being healthy.
This team has lacked guys who are consistent.
Oh, dude, 100%. And consistent is like being healthy, making tackles, being in the right spot, not missing assignments. There's a lot of value in that. I 100% agree. I would have Zachman higher. Let me ask you this. The 3 offensive linemen you talked about. So Mallman comes in 5th on this list. Brunner comes in 7th. And Renfro comes in 12th. Which one of those do you think is maybe in the best spot? And which one of those is in the worst spot on this list?
I think Renfro's probably too low. Honestly, they'd probably all be just slapped right together. If I was going to do it, it would probably be like Mallman, Brunner, and then Renfro right in a row. I think that's kind of where they're at.
Kind of middle of the pack, like 5 to 8.
Yeah, I think that's roughly where they would be. They'd lack the upside to an extent. It's offensive line. It's so hard for us as fans to truly grade, and I don't know if any of them are going to be massively dominant this year. I think they can be good, but I don't know if they're going to be dominant.
Let's take a look at the top 3. Your reaction to Hallman, number 1, Reiger, number 2, Allegro, number 3. And by the way, Hallman, far and away, number 1. 35 more votes, basically, than number 2. So Hallman, Reiger, Allegro, your top 3. What are your thoughts?
I'd have Reiger number 1. And the reason being is because if he's who he's been so far in camp, he is much more impactful than a corner is going to be. Rico can do a great job of shutting someone down. You have potentially 3 to 4 other options to throw the football to. If Reiger takes up one side of the field, not only does he get a quarterback necessarily have to move, but he also is forcing them, like, just impacting his eyes. where a quarterback is going to start to lose focus on what he's trying to do because he has people getting pushed into him, or he has to move, or you start having to shift the pocket where you have to have a quarterback potentially throwing on the run. Things you don't want to do. Like, it's fine if you have to occasionally do that because you have a bootleg play or something set up, but you ideally want to be able to throw it from the pocket clean. And Reiger's a guy who has a chance to not only speed up the quarterback, but also potentially kind of obliterate the pocket.
Yeah, I agree with you. By the way, if you're listening to the show, leave your thoughts in the comments. Who are your top 10? Who on this list do you agree with, disagree with? You agree with Justin and I or disagree with us? I had Reiger number 1 on my list for really all the same reasons you had. I just think the ability to impact an opposing offense as an edge is, I think, a little higher than a corner. And because you can impact the run game, you can impact the passing game. You can just not throw at Rico. Right? I mean, teams did that at times last year. And then it's not that the impact Rico has goes away because he's taking away a receiver to some degree, but it's a lot harder to completely avoid or disrupt a defensive end. You can't just roll away from him every freaking play. This isn't EA Sports. Like, it doesn't work. So I have him at number 1. And I also have him at number 1 because he's a guy that did do this in Louisville. He has proven it to some degree at this level. It's not all projection. And now he's healthy and he's looked dominant. So I had him at number 1 as well.
Yeah, I think Hallman is clearly number 2. Allegro, you and I are kind of in the same spot where we really like him, but we need to see him look dominant. I think that what we've seen so far is that he's really good athletically. We need the instincts to take a step. We need to see the production take a step. Tackles are fine. I need to see disruptive plays, meaning I need to see tackles for loss and I need to see sacks. Like that, you need to create that type. If you're that type of player, you need to have that type of impact.
Yep. By the way, Christian Allegro was number 3 on my list. Rico was 2. Reiger was 1. So if we just flip those top 2, that's exactly where I'm at. So the community is a tick higher on Rico, and I'm a tick higher on Reiger. Are these 3 NFL guys? Like, what does your gut tell you? Are these 3 guys NFL guys?
I think so. I think you're probably going to argue with people over where, but I think so. Reiger has a chance to really improve his stock this year. I think it's reasonable to think about 8 sacks with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would not be shocked to see him have a couple of games where he gets a couple in a game. That does not mean that he's going to go out and every week have sacks, but I think he's going to be truly impactful as a defensive player, which is something we've lacked the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think 8 is pretty good. And if he gets 8 against his schedule, it's going to answer a lot of questions because he's going up against real offensive tackles with this schedule.
Yeah. With his frame, I think it's reasonable to say that probably would put him in the top 4 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's that type of production with his body and in all honesty, the guy just plays his butt off, which is something that coaches notice. That motor is going to play at the NFL level.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you. Hallman's going to have to run decently well at the combine. Now, that is going to be a question that he'll have to answer. But I think he's probably an NFL guy. I think Allegro probably is. Allegro has some questions. That's another one I want to hit on. You kind of talked about it. I feel like I have him at 3rd on my list. So I believe in Christian Allegro. Yeah. I believe in the upside. But he hasn't been a full-time starter. And I think there are spots where now we have to see it. And I think much like you, he's still in a little bit of prove-it mode for me.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is we really like him as an athlete. We need to see him really start to look like some of the throwback Badgers, the Sanborns, the Chanels, and stuff like that. Guys who just make plays. And I love seeing him rack up 16 tackles, but part of that was the fact that the defensive line wasn't tackling anybody last year. So they were just kind of being siphoned to him. He still made the plays, and listen, somebody had to make them, and he was a guy who cleaned up a lot of messes. Mm-hmm. We need to see him prove that he can get in the backfield now and be disruptive.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's very fair. All right, we're going to take a second there. We're going to get into the next set of this grouping. Is Vinny Anthony too high? Is Dilin Jones not high enough? We're going to talk about next. Is there too big of a gap between Dilin Jones and Darian Dupree? We're going to talk about all that next. Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. Listen, as summer's here, there is a ton of great sports going on. I know Justin is super into Brewers baseball right now. If you are betting over on FanDuel, hard to find a hotter, Justin, ticket than the Brewers right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're winning every time, you start to have midweek games where you're getting 40K plus. So
that is not bad. Also, golf going on, a bunch of stuff going on over at FanDuel. It is a great spot, quick payout, simple interface, great user support. It is also the number one spot. If you want to get a little bit of a deal, being a Locked On listener right now, head over to FanDuel. New customers get $5, or if you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, you will get your payouts when you're supposed to, without hassle, without fuss. I've been on other sites where it feels like they're funneling money through 13 different guerrilla organizations just so you never get paid. Like FanDuel will get you your money when you win. It's fast, it's simple, it's easy. Great time to do it over on FanDuel.com with that new offer. And yeah, bet on the Brewers. Not going to find a better ticket than that. All right, let's move on to this one, Justin. Keep going through this list. We talked about our top three. I think we're kind of aligned with that, actually. I'm curious if we start to get into some disagreements here. Number 4, Vinny Anthony. 5, Riley Mahlman. 6, Dilin Jones. What do you feel about that grouping?
I think that's probably right for now in the preseason. I think by season's end, this is an area that could change. I really want to be like take a breath on the young players and be reasonable with expectations. That doesn't mean that I don't think that Dilin Jones could end up being the best player on this list by the end of the season. Let's give him a chance to actually do it first. So at this point, we need him to go out there and actually prove that he's that player rather than just handing it to him because he's having a nice camp.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm pretty high on Dilin Jones. Dilin Jones was 4th on my list, but that means he's in this grouping. Vinny Anthony was a few ticks down. I really like Vinny Anthony. I want to see him do it against, I don't know, maybe I'm focused too much on that Penn State game, Justin, where I feel like they kind of took him out of it. We also had Braden Locke throwing the ball. That's not an entirely fair thing to judge him on.
He did have a long catch in that game, though, too.
Yeah.
So he made a couple of plays. To be fair, there was a lot of slants. They were feeding the slant there for a little bit in that game, and then Anthony got blown up, and the ball almost got picked, so he stopped throwing it.
Same question I ask you for those top 3. Anthony, Mahlman, Jones. Are these NFL guys?
I think so. I know Mahlman is. Like, I would be shocked if he doesn't get himself into the NFL. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a hype. Unless he has a dominant year this year, I would guess it's going to be probably in that 4 through 6 range would be where I'd probably predict him to be. Yeah, I think he's going to get drafted. I think Renfrow is going to get drafted. I think Brunner will definitely get drafted because I think all 3 of those guys are going to put together good film this year, and it's really going to help them being in an offense that's probably fits their skill set a little bit better too.
Yeah, I think Grimes is good for him. A lot of offensive line tech coaches in the staff now. Here's where, and I don't know that I necessarily disagree with you individually on any of these players, but I feel like last year we talked about the guys we thought could get drafted. And you might not have been on a show, maybe that was Osen on that show with me or G, but we talked about Jaheim Thomas and we talked about Pius potentially. We talked about some offensive linemen. We talked about Huber.
Was this postseason or in the?
This was preseason.
Okay.
Like this was in the fall though.
It probably was me then, but we also had like Jaheim Thomas. To be fair, was really good the year before, and then just was
in SEC school. Yeah, but I guess my point is if we think all these guys, because these are all guys playing this year, if we think these top 6 are all probably NFL guys, and you've mentioned you think Brunner probably is, Renfrow potentially is. If we have 8 NFL guys on this roster, I mean, we should be winning, but we should be higher on this team, I guess. I'm trying to figure out the right way to word this. You see what I'm saying, though? I
think the way you look at it is a lot of mid to late round guys versus having guys who are considered stars. You have good players versus great or elite guys. And I think we have guys that potentially could be like, could Anthony turn himself into like a top 3 round guy? If he really plays out and has like 900 yards this year, yeah, there's a chance. Like I think the tools will stick out at the combine. He's probably going to run somewhere in the 4.4s, which will give him a shot. And I think he's got a decent frame. Like I think he's a legit 6'1". He moves pretty well. He's polished. So there's a lot to like there. He's just not a guy. Like if you're a team looking for an elite number 1 guy, he doesn't have the athleticism. Like he's not a freak fluid athlete like the top of the draft guys.
Right, but he's probably like a DK. I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
He's not a
Yeah,
top
I think he's
round pick, but
I think he's DK with a little more strength. One of the things about DK is I never felt like he played overly physical at wide receiver.
I didn't mean to go down this rabbit hole. It's just interesting when we look at who we think might be NFL guys. Because there were 2 NFL guys on the roster last year that got picked, right? It was you had Wooler and you had Nelson, and they were 6th and 7th round picks, and then you had a couple UDFA guys. If we're and not all these picked this year, but if we're thinking in the 2 deep, there's 6 or 7 NFL guys. I almost think you have to adjust how you look at this team. And I hear you on the point of they're not necessarily stars, but last year's team had a 6th and a 7th round where we won 5 games.
So here's something, and I'm curious how much you think that this plays out. How much does like quality and actual production change your draft position? If we go out and average 30 points per game this year or get close to that, does that dramatically alter how these offensive linemen look in the eyes of NFL guys? Because last year it was easy for teams to probably skip over some of our guys like Huber, who probably didn't get a second look because they're like, well, the offense was terrible. Why am I looking at this guy? Unless you're really digging for, does this guy have something to hang his hat on? And I don't think measurables wise, you looked at Huber and you're like, this guy's a freak show. I think there's some tools there with, like, Mulman had some pedigree coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Brunner. Renfro has the playoff run where he was really good early in his career. Hopefully, being another year removed from the injuries, now you get to see that similar player again, which quite honestly would be huge for Wisconsin if that's the case. If the interior of the line is really good, I think the run game will play this year.
I think I would take your question, I think, and actually flip it. I think if we're averaging 30 points a game or 29, somewhere in that range, it means the offensive linemen are playing well.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of what you're saying, just phrase it a little differently.
Yeah, which means that I think that people are going to look at them and be like, yeah, look, they led a quality offensive attack.
Against good competition, against really good competition. I wonder on Mulman, because you and I talked about that. We talked about this with a different conversation about Kevin Haywood the other day, which we're not going to dive into right now, but we talked about how tackle desperate the NFL is. Mm-hmm. I wonder on Mulman if he's athletic enough. Right. There is he's still in college as a senior with that type of frame at Wisconsin. And for that reason, I wonder if he's not maybe an NFL guy or if he is, if he's at like 7th round UDFA type.
I think he is, but I think like you don't have a lot of versatility with him. Like he's probably a right tackle or a guard in the NFL. And I don't like, he hasn't played any guard. I'm sure you can switch him to that, and that will hurt him dramatically if that's the case. Where teams will look at it and be like, well, why are we going to pick him when there's plenty of guys who actually played guard that we have film on, and we know it will translate to the NFL.
All right, let's get to my next grouping here. I completely hijacked this, but I thought that was an interesting rabbit hole. So we have our top 6. 7 is Brunner, 8 Austin Brown, and then there's a pretty big gap down to 9 Billy Edwards.
Yeah, I think Brown is the interesting one here because he's like Dilin Jones. By the end of the season, he's a guy who could just skyrocket up this. He's got the measurables. The NFL is going to love him. I think that he has a chance now that he can freely play on the back end as a safety, that you see him get to be a little bit of a ball hawk, whereas, being kind of restricted to the slot before really hurt him from a production standpoint. So I expect him to have a really good season. I actually think he could end up being better than Zachman. I just don't think you can hand him that in the preseason sight unseen.
I really like the point you made there, because I was going to say it similarly. I think you said it really well. I think Brown in the slot, it kind of took away from his playmaking. I don't think it was the best use of him. They just had to put him there.
Yeah, he was the one best fit to play that spot. It doesn't mean it was the best fit for him from a skill set standpoint.
And can we also talk about the fact that a guy with his size, the ability to play some slot corner where there's two-way goes for receiver,
that's going to help him
from
when it comes draft time. People are going to be like, he held up pretty well in the slot. He's got some versatility if we want to get cute with him in our scheme at the NFL level.
And just for the record, I had him at 5 on my list. So which is an upside play. He has to prove it, but
absolutely.
I had him at 5 on my list. I had Billy Edwards at 9. He comes in at 8 on this list. And I had Brunner. Brunner wasn't on my list. That's one of the biggest discrepancies I had, because I think Brunner, similar to Christian Allegro to some degree, similar to some of these other guys. He's younger. His Pro Football Focus numbers weren't great last year. He led the team in penalties, tied with Jack Nelson. Again, I don't use Pro Football Focus as gospel, but I always say use it as a data point. I think he has some room to grow and prove it still.
You know my feelings on Pro Football Focus. We won't dive down that. I think it's fair. I think he was also younger than most of our offensive linemen last year. So you had a guy who was kind of going through some growing pains. I expect him to be substantially better. I do think he's got a nice mean streak, which is something that this offensive line needs in the run game. It's similar to why I like Mandel so much. Like you and I watched his film. He's a really good athlete on the interior, but he's mean. Like he just loved punishing dudes when he was in high school. So I really like our interior of the line. I mean, really, if I'm going to look at it and say who's got the most limited upside, it's Renfro. I question how physical he's going to be this year as a center, because I don't look at him as being like that just, road grading center. I think he's solid. I think he's kind of an all-around guy, but I don't see him as a guy who I'm necessarily looking to go up against top shelf defensive line talent and to hold up extremely well. I think he can be solid, but I don't expect him to be able to outplay a guy on the opposite side if they're a good player.
I think that's fair for him. And I don't know if he's ever fully been that guy, that kind of powerful Travis Frederick type of archetype in the center. It's not really his game. I think he's solid. And if he's solid this year, snaps the ball well, makes the line calls, perfect. Stay healthy, please.
He could be Tippmann.
Yes. Stay healthy.
Which would be great. If he ends up being Tippmann, that's amazing for us this year.
Please stay healthy, Jake Renfro.
Yes.
I think it's so important for this year. All right, we're going to take one more quick second, finish up on this, including is Darian Dupree too low? And which of the honorable mentions should be higher? Most disrespected player on this list. That's all coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. All right, let's come back into this, Justin. Put this list back up. Darian Dupree comes in at 10 on this list, 48 votes, about half of what Dilin Jones got. I know you've talked a lot about Darian Dupree, what you think he is, where you think his fit is. Is that a little too low, or is that about right for Darian?
Probably. I mean, there's a chance. Listen, we really like Jones. Depending on how this splits out, he could hang with him. Like I don't think that there's going to be a huge discrepancy in terms of production. It wouldn't shock me to have Jones go for like 1,000, 1,100 yards and Dupree be like at 850 or something like that. Because he's going to be used in different ways and he's going to have catches. So like you're kind of looking at it as like, how do you rate these two? They're going to do it in different ways. But Dupree can run between the tackles. I feel like people have started to talk about him like, oh, he needs to be running jet sweeps and stuff like that. And it's like, no, he's pretty stout as a running back. Like he's not afraid to hit people and he's not small. Like I believe coming out of the winter, he was actually heavier than Jones.
Yeah. People treat him like I'm trying to think of a good, like Aaron Cruikshank or something, right?
Darren Sproles.
Yeah. Like he's like 5'4", and he's solid. Like he runs with power. He showed that in practice. He ran over the A guard. He runs between the tackles. He has good vision.
He's just more shifty than power.
Yeah, he's not as smooth, right? Like whereas Dilin, I think Dilin is very effortless. There's still times I think Darian.
He's got some Melvin Gordon to him. It's like Melvin Gordon and James White.
Yeah, Darian uses a little too much at times when you sometimes just put the foot in the ground and get 3 yards, 4 yards. I think Darian will try to extend a little too much, but I like them both. I'm going to put you on the spot here because same thing we've been talking about. That group of four, Brunner, Brown, Edwards, Dupree, NFL guys.
I mean, long-term, I think both. I think Brown is. I think Dupree is. We already said Brunner. Edwards, I really so much depends on this season for him. He needs to have a good season. If he's what he was last year at Maryland, like 15-9 again, that's not going to get it done. Because he's in a better ecosystem here than what he was there. He's got to improve.
I'm going to say Edwards probably isn't, but he's not so far off, I think, that people think. He's got enough size. He's got enough arm. He can move. He's going to be the right leader. I think he's a UDFA type. If he puts together a solid year, if he puts together a great year, who knows? But I think he's a UDFA type. I think Austin Brown physically can be. And again, now we're starting to talk about.
I mean, he's a 4'4" guy that's like 6'1", 200, 210, whatever he is.
Short area quickness, and he will hit. Like, he will come up and tackle. He's a physical guy. I don't know, man. It feels like we've talked ourselves into too many NFL guys. Let me ask
Well,
this.
I mean, part of it is we need to also realize it's not necessarily what your measurables are for everything. Some of it is a popularity contest, which is why we see Badger linebackers littered all over the NFL and being studs who were drafted late behind guys. Like, I'm have to deal with this Quay Walker garbage and at the Packers, who we take him over Leo Chanel, and it's like, oh, we're bad against the run. How great it would be to have a middle linebacker that actually blows up the running game. Instead, I get a guy who's afraid to hit.
It's a lot of fun to have players on your team from your favorite college team too. I've experienced that. I know everyone has it. It's a lot of fun. Let me ask you this. The next 5 on this list, the honorable mentions. You have Tackett Curtis, Jake Renfro, Preston Zachman, Corey Walker, Jaden Ballard. We talked about Zachman. We both think he should be higher. Of those other 4, maybe take Renfro out too, because we talked about offensive linemen. So out of Walker, Ballard, Curtis, who should be higher on this list?
Probably Walker.
I think so too.
I think he's been dinged up in fall camp, which has probably not helped him. He's a guy who I think legitimately he could very well be a what's his name for the Steelers defensive lineman that we had.
Loudermilk?
Loudermilk, yeah. He could be a Loudermilk. Like, I think he could end up being a 5th round pick as a 3-4 defensive end. Like, he's 290, he's 6'5". He moves well. He's a guy who's probably going to, if he puts up a productive year and can be stout against the run, he'll get into the NFL because he's got the frame. He's been fairly productive. I think he probably needs to get to 3-4 sacks. It's really going to depend on how they use him. If they start pulling him out every time we go into a pass sets, it's probably going to hurt him in terms of the NFL, because those are guys for other teams that are probably playing and getting the opportunity to pass rush, whereas we may go just select with packages here a little bit more.
No, but I'm with you. I like the frame. I like the size. He had 5.5 sacks last year.
Mm-hmm.
I know wasn't in the Big Ten, but it also was in Division I. Like, he was at a max school with 5.5 sacks. I like that one. 13 votes. Feels like if he had played this fall, if he'd been fully healthy, I think he would be higher on this list.
We'd be hearing about him on a daily basis. He played really well in the spring.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think so, because I think he has that type of frame. Here's a couple other players that didn't get into this top 15. Tell me one of these guys that you think should be higher or maybe in this top 15. Lance Mason, Agard, Perkins, Fearby.
Probably Mason, Agard, and Perkins. Fearby, I just don't know what the role is yet. Perkins is going to play.
Mm-hmm.
Agard is probably our second starter, and I'm high on him. I think people will be surprised at how well he holds up for most of the season. And Mason has played really well in fall camp, and I think that we haven't heard a lot about Tretch, and I wonder if it's going to be because Lance Mason is going to be really productive in the middle of the field, where you're like, do I want an undersized slot playing out there, or do I want Lance Mason, who moves well and can be capable of receiver? It has a little bit of quickness to him in that intermediate area.
I think he's going to give us something this year, Mason. I was surprised at how good he looked. I talked to Coach Letton. The one thing Letton said I thought was interesting, because I asked him, have you been surprised by anything Mason has done? And because Mason's played really well in practice. And I expected him to say, yeah, and something. And he said, no, we saw 3 years of film of him. We knew we were kind of what we were getting. I'm paraphrasing, but I was like, wow, okay. It felt a little, when he answered that question, it felt a little bit less of a break glass in case of emergency. We need a body. And, we had Koziel, but we also really like this guy. And it feels like it's more of that.
Yeah, I think we've changed our approach in terms of the portal. I think they really are heavily scouting during the season. I think Wisconsin, for the most part, had specific guys that they were targeting that they felt like were good fits if they chose to come into the portal. And Mason probably was one at FCS. Like, he was one of the most productive tight ends at that level. And if they looked at it and said, all right, these measurables will play here, then he's probably a guy. We've seen FCS guys come up and make plays at the major level. Sometimes it's just a guy's a late bloomer. Mm-hmm. Like, that happens all the time. That's why you see guys that are playing from the Sun Belt Conference in the NFL draft, because maybe they were a 140-pound corner coming out of high school They grew 2 inches, and now they're 180 and running a 4.4. And it's like, oh, wow, this guy's a really good athlete, but he was super undersized when he was coming out of high school.
Yeah, there's late bloomers for all sorts of reasons. He is Justin. I'm Ryan. Locked on Badgers. Drop a comment if you disagree with us, or drop a comment if you agree with us. That's fine too. It's okay to be.
We're just expecting the disagreement.
Right, like it's also okay to be kind on the internet. Do that too. Thank you for tuning in to Locked on Badgers. As always, go check out Justin on the Bucky Report with Rajiv on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk to you guys tomorrow.